السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وحبيبه. بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح الأمة فكشف الله به الغمة وتركنا على المحجة البيضاء ليلها كنهارها لا يزيغ عنها إلا هالك. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, O you who believe, fear and be conscious of Allah as He should be feared, and do not die except in a total state of submission to Him and Him only alone. Amma ba'd, brothers and sisters, one day Talha ibn Ubaidullah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with him, he reported and he says, two men came to the Prophet ﷺ one time, and both of them took their shahada at the same time. And throughout their lives, one of these men, he fought in jihad more than the other. And at one point, the first man who fought for the Muslims, he passed away. And a year after, the second man, who was okay, he was doing good, but he didn't used to partake in jihad a lot, he then passes away a year after. So there's a year in between them. And Talha, he said that one time when I slept and I had a dream. And I saw in my dream that I was standing in front of the gates of Jannah. And he says, those two men were there. Those two men were there. One who had partaken in jihad and he had died, and then another who died a year after him. And he said, someone came out of the gates and allowed the man who passed away a year after to go into Jannah. And then that man entered Jannah, the gates were closed, and then someone came out, and then the first man who died, who used to partake in jihad a lot, he then was allowed to enter Jannah. And then Talha, he says, I heard a voice. They returned to me and he said, go back. It's not time. Your time has not come yet. Your time has not come yet. And then Talha woke up. And after waking up, he immediately began informing the others. The other Sahaba. It's something that's absolutely insane. He said, Ya Fulan, Ya Fulan, this is what I saw in my dream. I saw those two men. But the first one to get admitted into Jannah was the one that died a year after, not the one who spent a lot of his time in jihad. And what's going on? And eventually, this reached the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, when they told him about this, he said, "Min ayyi dhalika tu'jabun?" He said, What are you surprised about? What are you surprised about? And say that they said, Ya Rasulullah, هذا كان أشد الرجلين اجتهادا ثم استشهد ودخل هذا الآخر الجنة قبله. They said, Ya Rasulullah, out of both of them, the first man partook in jihad more. And not only that, he died as a martyr. He died in the state of jihad. How come the man who died a year after him gets to enter first? How come, Ya Rasulullah? And then he said, did he not remain behind him for 1 year? Did he not, where there was a 1 year gap? And they said, yes, Ya Rasulullah. He said, yes, Ya Rasulullah. And then he says, أدرك رمضان فصام وصلى كذا وكذا من سجدة في السنة. He said, did he not reach Ramadan? And did he not fast Ramadan? And did he not pray with such and such a number of prostrations in Ramadan in this year that he lived? And they said, yes, Ya Rasulullah. And so the Prophet ﷺ, and I want everyone to listen to this. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, so the difference between them, the difference between the first and the second man is greater than what is between the heavens and the earth. There's that much of a difference from the second person who lived to see another Ramadan, brothers and sisters. One Ramadan changed this man's entire qadr to the point where he got admitted into Jannah before the first man who died as a martyr did. Before the first man who died as a martyr did. And now to fully understand how one Ramadan, brothers and sisters, one Ramadan can change your life, we might and change one's destiny, we must first trace back to how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us about Ramadan in the Quran. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, He says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. He says, oh you who believe. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, oh you who believe, it's all up for attention for us. We're wide awake. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's talking to us. He has something very important for us to hear. So He says, oh you who believe. He's talking to you and I. He says, fasting is prescribed to you. Kutiba alaykum as-siyam. Fasting is prescribed to you. And the word kutiba is extremely interesting. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say kutiba? Why didn't He say uhilla? Or why didn't He say faradtu alaykum as-siyam? Kutiba, one of the best translations of this word is prescribe. And the first thing that comes to mind when we hear the word prescribe and prescription is medicine. SubhanAllah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, fasting is prescribed to you. Right? Fasting is prescribed to you. It is like medicine. Fasting is medicine for us. Right? It's a source of relief. When you take medicine, you have a headache, and you take those 2 Tylenol pills, or the Advil, or whatever you take, the headache goes away, right? The headache goes away, and you're relieved, and you're at ease, and you can function again. You can breathe normally without having to worry about what sickness befalled you. And so, Ramadan, brothers and sisters, it acts like a medicine for us. Just exactly how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us in the Quran. And that makes us wonder, how? How does Ramadan act like a medicine for us? And in what aspects? Does it heal my headache? Right? Does it heal my stomach ache? What does it heal in me? Right? And the first of this very big list is physically, because that is one thing that we have, that we see, and that is proven by science, and that is easy to take. Physically, whenever we fast, our bodies, they undergo this process of re-nourishment, right? All the bad cells get wiped out, and when we fast, it promotes blood sugar control, and it improves the heart and the health of the heart, and it improves the gut and its health. Everything is meant that we do has a reason, brothers and sisters. And Ramadan, it acts like a medicine physically, and it also does so spiritually. And this is the most important one. Right? We worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more in Ramadan. How many of us see ourselves in the masajid more? We're inclined to do more good. We're inclined to stay up till Fajr, doing nothing but reading Quran. We're inclined to finish Quran. We're inclined to even open the Quran and read and learn, right? This isn't just a coincidence. This isn't a coincidence. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Prophet, they tell us that in Ramadan, the shayateen are locked away. In Ramadan, the gates of Jannah are all open. In Ramadan, the gates of hellfire are all closed. So brothers and sisters, nothing is a coincidence, right? We are inclined to do more good for a reason, because this month is here to heal us spiritually, for us to gain taqwa, which I will get to in the short time, inshallah. And it is meant for us to connect back with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is meant for us to connect back with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the third way Ramadan can heal us is psychologically. Yes, absolutely. Whenever we fast, whenever we deprive ourselves from food and drink and looking at haram and being around haram, it offers us a new perspective on life. Wallahi, it does, right? When a person is so used to the luxurious life, and he's so used to a certain habit or a certain kind of food that they used to eat, and that suddenly goes away, they'll understand the importance of it. And they'll, long for it. And they'll wish they had it back. And it changes the mentality. And it changes the psychology of a human being. Right? Something, I am used to eating lamb every single day. And then Ramadan comes. Used to eating breakfast every single day. And then Ramadan comes. And now I wake up and I can't have breakfast. Ya Allah, how I miss breakfast. Ya Rabbi, I miss breakfast. Of course, I'm not going to eat it. I'm not going to break my fast. I want to please you, Ya Rabbi. But now I understand. And now I have a mentality shift. And I value food more. And I value my time more. And I value everything that I used to take for granted more. Right? And then the last is mentally and emotionally. Ramadan acts like a medicine for us, mentally and emotionally. Ramadan encourages us to do more good deeds. And it encourages us to abstain from negativity. And it encourages us to abstain from haram, anything that can be of bother to us mentally or emotionally. It advises us to stay away from that. And Ramadan encourages us to do more good, like giving away in charity. Brothers and sisters, charitable acts can boost endorphins. It can boost the feel-good brain chemical in your brains, in our bodies, when you give. So Ramadan encourages all of this. And this helps to decrease stress. And it helps us detach from these negative feelings. And it helps us heal on all types of levels, not only physically, but spiritually, mentally, psychologically, and emotionally. So Ramadan and fasting, they act as a medicine, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. So He says, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ, O you who believe, fasting has been prescribed to you. And then he says, كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ, as it was prescribed to the people before you. As it was prescribed to the people before you. What does this tell us, brothers and sisters? This tells us that this formula, that this medication, it's not something new. It's something that was implemented in the past. Whether it was previous generations, previous aqwam, previous prophets, fasting was always part of their equation. Fasting was always part of their equation. And it always acted like a medicine. But most importantly, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He chooses to end this ayah. He says, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you may attain taqwa. This is the most important fundamental goal of fasting, so that you may obtain taqwa. And what is taqwa, brothers and sisters? What is taqwa? Is it just fear of Allah? Is it just being scared of His punishment? Is it just remembering Him out of fear? Absolutely not, brothers and sisters. Taqwa is so much more than fear. Taqwa is having fear of Allah while loving Him and being conscious of Him at every second of your life. A very famous scholar, he was once asked. He went to France, Sheikh Ramadan al-Bouti. He went to France once, and he was giving a lecture. And after the lecture was over, this woman approached and she said, everything that you said was amazing. Every single point that you made was spectacular. But I just have one problem. One problem and one problem only. And he says, what? What's your problem? What's going on? And she says, how can a person have fear while still loving someone or something else? And he looks at her and he says, what greater fear can you have than losing the one that you love? What greater fear can you have than losing the one that you love? When it comes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and when it comes to attaining taqwa, and trying to be conscious of Him, and trying to love Him, while fearing His punishment, and fearing losing that connection with Him, only then will we attain this true goal of Ramadan. And once Umar radiallahu anhu, he asked the companion, he said, describe for me what taqwa is. He said, describe for me what taqwa is. And the companion, he responded, if you were to walk through a thorny pathway with a flowing robe, how would you walk? He says, yeah, Umar, if you were to walk and thorns are everywhere, and you have a nice robe on, how would you walk? Would you run? Would you walk freely? And then Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, I would gather my garments, I would lift them up, squeezing them tight, and I would look at every single step that I take just to make sure that thorns don't stick to my body or to my garment. And then the companion, he looks at him and he says, that is what taqwa is. That is what taqwa is. So brothers and sisters, having taqwa, attaining taqwa, having that as your goal is something that is essential in Ramadan and in fasting, just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentioned. So Ramadan, brothers and sisters, it came down as a mercy for us. It came down as a mercy for us. And it came down as a medicine for us. And it came down to remedy us. And it only comes down once a year. And it's packed with goodness. And it's a perfect storm that has been brewing, right? And then the second part of the khutbah, we'll discuss and we'll talk about how we can prepare more for Ramadan. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فيا فوز المستغفرين استغفروه. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Brothers and sisters, now that we know the blessings that Ramadan brings, and we know the essence of Ramadan. And we discussed how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He chose to talk about Ramadan. The only thing left for us to do is how can we prepare ourselves for taking this medicine? How can we prepare ourselves to heal emotionally and physically and mentally and spiritually? We are currently in the month of Sha'ban. We are currently in the month of Sha'ban. And Ramadan is less than 3 weeks away. And Sha'ban comes between a sacred month, Rajab, and the holiest month for Muslims, Ramadan. And so it acts like a buffer month in this period until Ramadan comes. And so the only thing that we can look at is we can look at the Prophet. What did he used to do in Sha'ban? What should we do in Sha'ban to prepare ourselves for Ramadan? So Aisha radiallahu anha, she reported, she said Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam, he would fast until we said that he would never break his fast. And then he did not fast until we said he would never fast. And then she said, I did not see the Prophet complete an entire month of fasting except for Ramadan. And then she says, and listen closely, brothers and sisters, she says, and I did not see him complete more voluntary fasts than in the month of Sha'ban. Brothers and sisters, the Prophet ﷺ, he fasted and fasted and fasted more and more in Sha'ban in preparation for Ramadan. And so the Sahaba, they saw this. The Sahaba, they saw this. And they were very curious. So Usama bin Zayd, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with both of them, he said, Ya Rasulullah, he said, I did not see you fasting in any other month as you fast in Sha'ban. Why do you fast in Sha'ban, Ya Rasulullah? And then the Prophet ﷺ, he said, that is a month to which people do not pay attention to. Allahu Akbar. He said that is a month that people do not pay attention to, between Rajab and Ramadan. And then he says, and it is a month in which deeds are lifted up to the Lord of the worlds. And I like for my deeds to be lifted up while I am fasting. I like for my deeds to be lifted up while I'm fasting. So brothers and sisters, the first thing that we can do during Sha'ban, in preparation for Ramadan, and in preparation to getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is fasting. Is fasting, brothers and sisters. If you have not started fasting, we should all try to fast Mondays and Thursdays. This Sha'ban, let's make it a goal of ours, to fast every Monday and Thursday from now until Ramadan. That's the first thing that we can do to prepare ourselves for what is to come, to prepare ourselves for the main meal, to prepare ourselves for Ramadan. The second thing is that what we could do in preparation for Ramadan is to read more Quran. To read more Quran so we don't overburden ourselves in Ramadan and we burn out one weekend. Get in the habit of reading 2 lines, 3 lines, 4 lines, half a page, 1 page, whatever you can before going to sleep. Every single night from now until Ramadan. That is another goal that we should have. And the third is dua. The third thing that we should long for is dua, or we should do is dua. And brothers and sisters, make dua that we witness Ramadan. Make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enable us to fast Ramadan and to gain the taqwa He was talking about. Because brothers and sisters, wallahi, us making it to Ramadan is not guaranteed. I don't care how old you are. I don't care how young you are. I don't care where you come. I don't care how healthy you eat or how healthy you are as a human body, as a physical body. A lot of us won't be making it to Ramadan. And that is the reality of it. Just the other week in Texas, one of the youth in Texas passed away. He was only 21 years old. He was only 21 years old. And there are more, and there are countless stories of young people passing away before Ramadan. Before Ramadan. And we already established that Ramadan, witnessing just one more Ramadan of someone else, from someone else, can get you immense blessings, right? It can get you immense blessings. So make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enables us, all of us, to reach Ramadan in a healthy manner and for us to benefit Ramadan. So why bother doing this now? Why bother even preparing ourselves for Ramadan? Why bother fasting right now? Right? The Ramadan is the month where we seek taqwa. Ramadan is the month where we open Quran, right? Why start now? Brothers and sisters, you can't take medicine on an empty stomach, or else your stomach will hurt. You guys ever been to a doctor and he prescribes Advil and he says, eat, take this while eating, or take this after you have a very heavy meal? It's that so everything, can settle in your body and your body can take that pill. That's the same exact thing with Ramadan. Ramadan is a huge meal, brothers and sisters. Ramadan is a huge meal for us. And it's a time where we do so many good things that there is a possibility of us burning out. So in order for us to avoid that burnout, we must focus on these small things from now. Small things from now. So that when Ramadan comes, we focus on everything that we need to focus without burning out, and we'll be prepared and more well suited for the month of Ramadan. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enable us to reach Ramadan. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us benefit from Ramadan and even before Ramadan. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us of those who start preparing preparing for Ramadan from this moment. اللهم اغفر لنا وارحمنا وعافنا واعف عنا وتجاوز عن سيئاتنا. اللهم إنا نسألك رضاك والجنة ونعوذ بك من عذاب القبر وعذاب النار. اللهم إنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا ولنكونن من الخاسرين. اللهم كن مع إخواننا المستضعفين في غزة. اللهم كن معهم ولا تكن عليهم. اللهم انصرهم ولا تنصر عليهم. اللهم أعنهم ولا تعن عليهم. اللهم داوي جرحاهم وارحم موتاهم وتقبل شهداءهم واجعلهم من أوليائك الصالحين. وصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم وأقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر، أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح، قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله.
لا إله إلا الله دائما أبدا، لا إله إلا الله. استقيموا تراصوا يرحمني ويرحمكم الله. Foot to foot, shoulder to shoulder, do not leave any gaps.